I've always believed that the strongest structures are built with patience. As an architect, I know that rushing leads to foundation cracks and structural weaknesses that might not show for years until, suddenly, everything collapses. The same, I discovered, applies to justice. When my wife accused me of abuse, the world believed her immediately. The police, our friends, my colleagues, even my own mother called to ask if I'd gotten help for my issues. But I had been building my defense long before Vanessa launched her attack, laying each brick of evidence with the same precision I used when designing the downtown library that had earned me my reputation. Some might call it paranoia. I prefer to think of it as foresight. "They're giving me the Henderson Project," I told Vanessa one night, smiling as I poured her another glass of Cabernet. It was our 10th anniversary, and I'd reserved a corner table at Luciano's, her favorite restaurant. Her face lit up beneath the soft amber lights. "That's the high-rise on Cedar Avenue?" "Eric, that's amazing." "Lead architect, full creative control." I raised my glass. "To new beginnings." She clinked her glass against mine, her diamond wedding ring catching the light. I remember thinking how beautiful she looked that night. Chestnut hair falling in waves past her shoulders, the black dress I'd bought her for Christmas hugging her curves. "You deserve it," she said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "No one works harder than you." I believed her then. Believed in us. The perfect power couple. The rising architect and his sophisticated event planner wife hosting dinner parties that the neighborhood talked about for weeks. Our colonial-style house in Oakwood Heights was featured in a local magazine. We vacationed in St. Barthélemy and posted the obligatory sunset photos. That night, we made love like we meant it. Or at least I did. It's strange how clearly you can see the cracks in retrospect. The way her phone would flip face down whenever I entered a room. The unexplained charges at hotels I never visited. The late nights coordinating events that somehow left no digital trail in her work calendar. I'd been designing buildings long enough to recognize when something wasn't structurally sound. The first concrete evidence came 6 months before everything fell apart. I had returned early from a conference in Chicago, a pipe burst in the convention center, flooding the exhibition hall, and they canceled the final day's presentations. I hadn't told Vanessa. Some impulse made me take an Uber instead of calling her for a ride. Our house was quiet when I entered, but her car was in the driveway. I set my luggage down softly in the foyer and listened. A laugh, her laugh, drifted from upstairs, followed by the lower rumble of a man's voice. I should have confronted them then, stormed upstairs, caught them in the act, become the wounded, righteous husband. That's what they show in movies. Instead, I quietly retrieved my suitcase and slipped back outside. I drove to a coffee shop and waited 3 hours before texting her that my flight had landed. "Can't wait to see you," she replied. "Dinner's in the oven." That night, she kissed me with the same lips that had been on him. Told me about her uneventful day managing a charity luncheon. Asked about my boring architect stuff with practiced interest. And later, she turned away from me in bed, claiming exhaustion. I lay awake until sunrise, planning. The private investigator, Raymond Costa, was a retired police detective with steady hands and sad eyes. 90% of my cases are exactly like yours, he told me in his sparse office, blinds half drawn against the afternoon sun. But most people wait until they're served divorce papers to come see me. I'm not most people, I replied. No, you're not. He studied my face. Most people come in here crying or punching walls. You're eerily composed. I pushed an envelope across his desk. $5,000. There's another 5 when you give me confirmation of the affair and the man's identity. Raymond didn't count the money. What exactly do you want me to do with this information once I have it? Confront her? File for divorce? Neither, I said. I want comprehensive surveillance. Photos, video, audio, when possible. Text message records if you can get them. I want to know where they meet, what they say to each other, and what they're planning. Planning? His eyebrows rose. You think there's more than just an affair? I thought about the conversation I'd overheard the previous week. Vanessa on the phone in our garden, voice hushed. He'd never survive that kind of accusation. His reputation is everything to him. We just need to be careful about the timing. Yes, I told Raymond. I think there's more. The digital recorders were smaller than I expected, each barely larger than a USB drive. I placed them strategically, one beneath the console table in our foyer, one taped under her vanity, one in the living room bookshelf, and one in my home office. I synchronized them to my secure cloud account that Vanessa knew nothing about. I became methodical, creating a documented timeline of her movements, cross-referenced with what she told me versus what actually occurred. I installed a GPS tracker on her car and monitored the credit card statements daily. I kept a journal, recording every inconsistency, every lie, no matter how small. When Vanessa told me she was having lunch with her college friend Melanie, I knew she was actually meeting him at the Edgewater Hotel. When she claimed to be working late on the Thompsons' anniversary party, I had photos of her entering his downtown penthouse apartment. I knew his name now. Mark Renard, real estate developer, married, wealthy. I researched him extensively, found the properties his company had developed, the charity boards he sat on with his wife Catherine, the interviews where he spoke about family values and community investment. I learned about his children's private schools and his vacation home in Aspen. I was building a case, piece by piece, and with each new piece, I felt less pain and more purpose. The phone call from Vanessa's friend Sophie wasn't entirely unexpected, but the timing caught me off guard. Eric, I don't know how to say this, she stammered. There was background noise. She was calling from her car. Vanessa came to me yesterday. She had bruises on her arm. She said that things have been getting worse at home. My hand tightened around the phone, but my voice remained neutral. That's concerning to hear. When did she say this happened? Last weekend? After some argument about the charity gala. Eric, I've known you both for years, but she was shaking when she told me. She made me promise not to tell anyone, but I can't just... I was in Portland last weekend, I interrupted quietly. The Western Architecture Symposium. There are about 200 people who can confirm I was there from Friday morning until Sunday evening. Silence on the line. Sophie, think carefully. Did Vanessa specifically say I caused those bruises? Not in those exact words, but the implication was clear. I see. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. Sophie, I appreciate you calling me. I think Vanessa needs help, but not the kind you're thinking of. I can't say more right now. Just be careful what you believe. After we hung up, I reviewed the timeline in my journal. While I was in Portland, Vanessa had spent both nights at Mark's penthouse. Raymond had photographed them entering together, champagne in hand. Whatever bruises she had, they weren't from me. The accusations had begun, sooner than I expected, but not before I was ready. 2 days later, I returned home to find a police cruiser in my driveway. 2 officers, a man and a woman, stood on my porch with grim expressions. Mr. Lawson? The female officer asked. I'm Officer Chen. This is Officer Baxter. We'd like to speak with you about a domestic disturbance report. I nodded calmly. Of course. Would you like to come inside? Actually, sir, we need to inform you that your wife has filed for an emergency restraining order against you. She's made some serious allegations of physical and emotional abuse. My heart raced, but I kept my face composed. I understand. May I see the order? Officer Baxter handed me the paperwork. I scanned it quickly, my architect's eye catching every detail. Vanessa claimed a pattern of escalating abuse over the past year, controlling behavior, monitoring her movements, explosive anger, and finally, physical violence. Specifically, an incident where I supposedly threw her against a wall and choked her last Tuesday night. Last Tuesday, when I was at a client dinner with 6 witnesses, including my firm's senior partner. "I understand this is difficult," Officer Chen said, misreading my silence for shock. "You'll need to collect some essential items and then leave the premises. You cannot contact your wife or come within 500 feet of her or your home until the hearing next week." I looked up from the papers. "May I gather my things?" "Yes, but we'll need to accompany you." I nodded and led them inside. In my office, I collected my laptop, some clothes, and a small lockbox from my desk drawer. As I packed, I noticed the empty spaces where Vanessa had removed her photos from our shelves. She'd been planning this, preparing the stage before the performance. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" Officer Baxter asked as I locked the front door for what might be the last time. "Yes," I replied. "I'll be fine." As their cruiser pulled away, I saw a curtain twitch in our bedroom window. Vanessa, watching, probably expecting tears or rage. Instead, I simply got into my car and drove away, the backup drives with all my evidence safely in the lockbox beside me. The hotel room was impersonal but clean. I sat at the small desk and opened my laptop, reviewing the latest report from Raymond. He'd been thorough, photographing Vanessa entering Mark's building the night before, capturing their lingering goodbye kiss in the underground parking garage this morning. I had expected the restraining order, but the timing was aggressive. Vanessa was accelerating her plan, which meant I needed to adjust mine. My phone buzzed with texts from colleagues, friends, asking versions of, "Is it true?" Word spread quickly in our social circle. I didn't respond to any of them yet. Instead, I called my firm's managing partner, Robert. "Eric," he answered, his voice grave. "I've just heard. The partners are meeting tomorrow morning to discuss the situation." "I understand," I said. "You need to protect the firm's reputation. These allegations, they're serious. The Henderson project—" "I know," I cut in. "You'll need to reassign it while this is sorted out. I'm not calling to argue about that." "Then what?" "I need you to trust me, Robert. I need you to remember that you've known me for 15 years, and Vanessa for only 5. I'm asking for time. The court hearing is next Friday. Wait until then before making any permanent decisions." He sighed heavily. "The client is already asking questions. The publicity will be much more favorable to the firm if you stand by me and I'm vindicated," I finished for him. "Think about how that headline reads." A long pause. "1 week, Eric. That's all I can give you. It would be enough." The media found the story irresistible. A prominent architect, respected community member, exposed as an abuser by his brave wife. The headlines were predictably sensational. "Local architect faces abuse allegations. Vanessa Lawson speaks out. I lived in fear. Pattern of abuse, hidden behind perfect marriage facade." Vanessa had given an exclusive interview to the local paper, complete with tearful photographs and carefully worded accusations that stayed just on the right side of libel laws. She described a controlling husband whose charming public persona masked a private terror. She was good. I had to give her that. When my phone rang with an unknown number, I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Mr. Lawson?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "This is Catherine Renard." My grip tightened on the phone. Mark's wife. "Mrs. Renard, how did you get this number?" "That doesn't matter." Her voice was taut with controlled anger. "I think we need to talk about your wife and my husband." We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe 30 miles outside the city. Catherine Renard was elegant even in casual clothes, her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The only sign of her distress was the slight redness around her eyes. "I received this yesterday," she said without preamble, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "Anonymous. but I think you know what's in it." I opened it carefully. Inside were photos, Vanessa and Mark together, entering hotels, kissing in his car, at restaurants with their hands intertwined. Nothing I hadn't seen before. "I didn't send these," I told her honestly. She studied my face. "But you knew?" "Yes." "How long?" she asked. "About 6 months," I replied. "But I suspect it's been going on longer." Catherine took a slow sip of her tea. "The abuse allegations, are they true?" "No," I replied. "That's what I thought." She leaned forward. "Mark has been different lately, secretive. I checked our accounts. He's been moving money, large amounts." This was new information. "When?" I questioned. "Starting 3 months ago, always just under the reporting threshold. I think they're planning to leave together once your reputation is destroyed and they've taken what they can from both of us." My mind raced, adjusting the blueprint of my strategy. "What do you want, Mrs. Renard?" Her eyes hardened. "The same thing you do, Mr. Lawson, justice." The week before the court hearing passed in a blur of preparation. Working with my attorney, James Harrington, we compiled the evidence into an undeniable narrative. The GPS records showing Vanessa's whereabouts contradicting her statements. The photographs documenting the affair. The audio recordings, most damning of all, where she discussed her false accusations with Mark. "Once the restraining order is permanent, we start the divorce process," her voice said clearly on one recording from our kitchen, 3 weeks before her accusations went public. "His firm has a morality clause. He'll lose the Henderson project, maybe his job. Then I get the house, alimony, half his retirement." Mark's voice, smug. "And we get rid of that self-righteous bastard without losing anything ourselves." Vanessa, laughing. "He still thinks I love him. It's almost too easy." James whistled low when he heard it. "This is comprehensive. You've been planning for this possibility for some time." "I've been documenting inconsistencies," I corrected. "The plan only formed when I understood her intentions." "Well, whatever you call it, it's going to blow her case out of the water." He shuffled through the papers. "The timing of her alleged abuse incidents, you have alibis for every single one. Multiple witnesses, hotel receipts, conference registrations. She didn't do her homework." "Vanessa always underestimated me," I said quietly. "She thought I was too trusting, too invested in appearances to fight back effectively." "We could go on the offensive immediately," James suggested. "File a counterclaim, release some of this to the press." "No," I was firm. "We wait. Let her finish building her narrative. The higher she climbs, the harder she'll fall." James gave me a curious look. "This is your reputation we're talking about. Your career. Every day these allegations stand, the damage is temporary," I finished. "Trust me on this, James. Timing is everything." The courtroom was packed for the restraining order hearing. Vanessa sat with her attorney, a sharp-featured woman in an expensive suit. She had dressed carefully for the role of victim, minimal makeup, conservative navy dress, hair pulled back simply. She kept her eyes downcast, occasionally dabbing at them with a tissue. I sat straight-backed beside James, my face neutral. I could feel the judgment from the spectators, the reporters scribbling notes. In their eyes, I was already guilty. Vanessa's attorney presented her case first, painting a vivid picture of escalating control and abuse. Vanessa took the stand, voice trembling as she described incidents that had never happened. Tears fell at precisely the right moments. She was a convincing performer. "And on the night of April 17th, her attorney prompted, "Can you tell the court what happened?" Vanessa's shoulders hunched slightly. "We'd been arguing about me going to a charity event without him. When I turned to walk away, he grabbed me by the throat and pushed me against the wall. He said if I ever embarrassed him again, he'd make me sorry." "Objection, Your Honor," James said calmly. "May we approach?" At the bench, James handed the judge a file. Your Honor, we have definitive proof that Mr. Lawson was not even in the city on the date in question. He was attending an architecture conference in Portland, with multiple witnesses and documentation. The judge frowned, reviewing the evidence. My conference registration, hotel receipt, photographs of me at the event, and statements from colleagues. Ms. Lawson, the judge called, this evidence directly contradicts your testimony about the events of April 17th. How do you explain this? Vanessa faltered, looking to her attorney. I might have confused the dates. The incident happened, but perhaps it was earlier that week. James produced another file. We have Mr. Lawson's whereabouts documented for each day that week as well, Your Honor. Client meetings, work functions, all with multiple witnesses. The judge's expression darkened. Ms. Lawson, are you certain about your allegations? Yes. He's manipulating the evidence, Vanessa insisted, her composure cracking. He's always been controlling, tracking my movements. That's an interesting choice of words, James interrupted smoothly. Your Honor, we'd like to present Exhibit C. The bailiff distributed copies of Raymond's report documenting Vanessa's actual whereabouts during the times she claimed to be abused. The hotel meetings with Mark Renard, the dinner dates while I was working late, the overnight stays at his penthouse. Vanessa's face went white. And finally, Your Honor, James said, we have audio evidence that Ms. Lawson fabricated these allegations as part of a planned attempt to defame Mr. Lawson and gain financial advantage in a divorce proceeding. The courtroom fell silent as Vanessa's own voice filled the room, describing her plan to accuse me falsely, laughing about how easily I would be destroyed. When Mark's voice joined hers, discussing how they would spend my money once the divorce was finalized, a murmur ran through the spectators. Your Honor, Vanessa's attorney began, the legality of these recordings were made in my client's own home with no reasonable expectation of privacy, James countered, and they clearly demonstrate a conspiracy to commit fraud upon this court. The judge's face was thunderous. We'll take a 15-minute recess. Ms. Lawson, I strongly suggest you confer with your counsel. As we waited in the hallway, James leaned close. The judge is going to dismiss her petition. He might even refer this to the district attorney for criminal charges, filing false reports, perjury. I nodded, watching Vanessa huddled with her attorney across the corridor, her perfect plan crumbling around her. There's more coming, I told James quietly. Catherine Renard filed for divorce yesterday, and she's frozen all their joint assets. James raised an eyebrow. You've been busy? I've been thorough, I corrected. When court resumed, Vanessa's attorney immediately moved to withdraw the petition for the restraining order. The judge granted it, then addressed Vanessa directly. Ms. Lawson, I am deeply disturbed by the evidence presented today. This court takes allegations of domestic abuse extremely seriously, as it should. But false accusations damage not only the accused, but also genuine victims whose voices deserve to be heard. I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. You are excused. As Vanessa hurried from the courtroom, reporters followed, shouting questions. The narrative was already shifting. By tomorrow, the headlines would tell a very different story. The fallout was swift and comprehensive. By evening, the first news reports appeared online. Architect cleared. Wife's abuse claims exposed as fraud. By the next morning, the full story had broken, complete with carefully edited excerpts from the recordings. Vanessa's social media supporters turned on her viciously. The same community that had embraced her as a brave survivor now vilified her as a manipulative liar. My phone rang constantly. Colleagues, friends, apologizing for doubting me. Robert called to say the Henderson project was mine again, with the client's full support. The partners want to issue a public statement backing you, he added. This could actually be good for the firm. Standing by our people, commitment to truth, all that. I accepted their support graciously, neither gloating nor bitter. In public, I was the wronged husband, who had faced the accusations with dignity, who had trusted in the legal system, who asked only for the truth to be known. Privately, I monitored the collapse of Vanessa's world with methodical attention. The district attorney charged her with filing a false police report, perjury, and attempted fraud. Her attorney dropped her case, citing irreconcilable differences in case strategy. Former friends deleted supportive posts and distanced themselves publicly. The charity boards she sat on quietly removed her name from their websites. Mark Renard fared no better. Catherine's divorce filing included evidence of his infidelity and financial misconduct. His business partners, concerned about the scandal, voted to buy out his share of their development company at a significantly reduced valuation. The local business journal ran a feature on his downfall, complete with quotes from former associates who had always had concerns about his ethics. 3 days after the hearing, Raymond called to tell me that Vanessa had moved out of our house, taking only clothing and personal items. She was staying at a mid-range airport hotel, alone. Mark, it seemed, had disappeared to his Aspen property, his phone disconnected. She tried to use your joint credit card, Raymond added. It was declined. I think the reality is setting in. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Keep monitoring. Let me know if anything changes. I had already filed for divorce, citing adultery and fraud. My new attorney, one of the best in the state, assured me that given the evidence, Vanessa would receive nothing. No alimony, no property. Her name would be removed from our accounts. The house would remain mine. She'll be lucky if she doesn't serve jail time, he told me. The DA is making an example of her. False accusations are a hot-button issue right now. I accepted this with a nod. I don't want her in jail. I just want the truth acknowledged. But we both knew that the damage to her reputation, her social standing, her future employment prospects, that punishment would be far more lasting than any jail sentence. Vanessa called me exactly 1 week after the hearing. I watched her name flash on my phone screen, considering whether to answer. Curiosity won out. Hello, Vanessa. Eric. Her voice was hoarse, as if she'd been crying. We need to talk. I don't think we have anything to discuss. My attorney... Please, she interrupted. 5 minutes. In person. That's all I'm asking. I shouldn't have agreed. There was nothing to gain. But some part of me wanted to see her face when her world had collapsed. Wanted her to see that I was still standing. We met at a public park, at a bench visible from the parking lot. Safe. Neutral territory. Vanessa looked diminished, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a plain sweater, her hair pulled back carelessly. The confident, polished woman I had married was gone. Thank you for coming, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I sat at the opposite end of the bench. 5 minutes. She twisted her hands in her lap. I know there's nothing I can say to fix this, but I want you to know. The things I said about you, the accusations. I didn't mean for it to go so far. Mark convinced me. Stop. My voice was quiet but firm. Don't insult me by lying again. I heard the recordings, remember? This was your plan. Your idea. Your execution. She flinched. You were always recording. Always watching. How long? How long were you gathering evidence against me? From the first time I suspected you were unfaithful. About 6 months. 6 months. She shook her head. All that time I thought I was the one in control, that you were oblivious. You underestimated me. You always did. And Mark? Did you plan what happened to him too? I allowed myself a small smile. Catherine Renard is an intelligent woman. Once she had the information, she made her own decisions. Vanessa looked out across the park, where children played on swings while their parents watched from nearby benches. Normal lives. Intact families. I've lost everything, she said quietly. My friends won't speak to me. I can't get a job in this city. Everyone knows my face now. The legal fees alone." She trailed off, then looked at me directly for the first time. "What do you want from me, Eric? An apology? Begging? Public humiliation? Tell me what would satisfy you." I studied her face, the face I had once loved, had planned a future with. I felt no triumph in her destruction, no joy in her suffering, only a sense of completion, of architectural precision. "I don't want anything from you, Vanessa. That's the point you're missing. I don't need your remorse or your punishment to move forward. I simply removed a destructive element from my life." "So clinical," she whispered. "So calculated. Maybe I wasn't so wrong about you after all." I stood, straightening my suit jacket. "Your 5 minutes are up. Don't contact me again. All communication goes through my attorney from now on." As I walked away, she called after me. "He didn't love me either, you know. Mark. He left me the moment things got difficult. Men like you, like him. You're all the same in the end." I didn't turn back. Her words meant nothing now. She meant nothing. The civil lawsuit was James's idea. Defamation, malicious prosecution, intentional infliction of emotional distress, he ticked off on his fingers. The damages to your reputation, your career, your mental well-being are substantial and documented. We could easily secure a 7-figure judgment. "She doesn't have that kind of money," I pointed out. "No, but Mark Renard does, and we can name him as a co-defendant based on the conspiracy evidence. Catherine's divorce isn't final, they're still dividing assets. A judgment against him now becomes part of that equation." I considered it carefully. The lawsuit wasn't about money. I didn't need it. My career had not only recovered but flourished. The Henderson project was proceeding ahead of schedule. I'd been approached about a possible partnership at the firm, but the lawsuit would be the final piece, the completion of the structure I had been building all these months. "File the paperwork," I told James. The case never went to trial. Mark Renard's attorneys, already fighting a losing battle in his divorce, advised settlement. The final amount, $2.3 million, was largely symbolic. Mark would pay the bulk of it, with Vanessa responsible for a token amount she would likely never be able to repay. The settlement included a public statement acknowledging the false nature of the accusations and a formal apology. It was printed in the same newspaper that had run Vanessa's tearful interview months earlier. Justice, precisely engineered. 1 year to the day after the court hearing, I stood on the observation deck of the Henderson building, my building, and looked out over the city. 42 stories up, the people below moved like miniature figures in an architect's model. Cars followed the grid of streets I had memorized over decades of living here. Sunlight glinted off the river that curved through downtown. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine Renard. "Final divorce decree signed today. Thank you again for everything. Dinner sometime?" We had developed an unexpected friendship over the past year. Not romance. We were both too scarred for that. But a quiet understanding. Two people who had survived similar betrayals and emerged stronger. I texted back, "Congratulations. Dinner sounds good." Raymond had kept me updated on Vanessa, though I hadn't asked him to. Old habits, perhaps. She had left the city 6 months ago, moving to a small town in another state. Working as an assistant at a local event planning company, a far cry from the high-profile clients she once managed. Living in a 1-bedroom apartment with second-hand furniture, starting over from nothing. Mark had fared marginally better, protected by the buffer of family money, but his reputation in the real estate world was irreparably damaged. The scandal had stained his name in the industry. His new developments struggled to find investors. Catherine had received the Aspen house in the divorce settlement, along with the majority of their liquid assets. As for me, I had the life I had built, my career, my home, my reputation not just restored, but enhanced by how I had handled the crisis. I had been invited to speak at conferences about architecture and resilience. A profile in a national magazine had described me as unflappable in the face of personal turmoil. If I sometimes woke in the night, reaching for a warm body no longer there, that was my private burden. If the house echoed with emptiness when I returned from work, I filled it with music or called friends to come over. If trust came harder now, with colleagues, with the women I occasionally dated, that was a reasonable adaptation to experience. I had won, completely and irrevocably. Yet standing at the edge of my greatest professional achievement, looking out over the city I had helped shape, I found myself thinking of Vanessa's words in the park. So clinical, so calculated. Perhaps she had been right about that much. I had approached her betrayal like an architectural problem, methodically, precisely, with careful attention to structural integrity. I had built my defense and her destruction with the same painstaking care I used when designing a skyscraper. But buildings, once complete, serve a purpose. They shelter, they inspire, they endure. My revenge, perfect as it was, had served its purpose. Now it was time to build something new. I took one last look at the city spread below me, then turned away from the view. The future, my future, waited to be designed. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.